The EU's role in cultural relations and the role of cultural relations in the external action of the EU are questions it's impossible to separate. The EU itself is multicultural, pluriculturel, perhaps. The EU's relations with its neighbours similarly have to recognise difference. First of all, they have to realise contextual limits based on an understanding of the contexts of the neighbourhoods, and they have to understand the need in cultural relations, as in other aspects of international relations, to both have a long-term strategy and to be able to respond to events and hopefully anticipate events. In order to do this, one needs to have evidence, one needs to have good quality research, one needs to proceed from the facts rather than necessarily from the ideals one hopes will come to pass. And thirdly, one needs to create structures which can support both research, strategy, and action, tangible action which brings easily identifiable, transparent and measurable results. I think this can be achieved by the EU, first of all through a program of research, secondly through listening to people in neighbourhood countries, and thirdly through considering all options for structures, including a thought which may be radical for the EU, which is creating a body to do this on behalf of the External Action Service, but which is independent on a day-to-day basis of it. So it's able to respond, for example, to events in Egypt quickly, without necessarily having to go through the internal consultation processes of the EU. Culture is important because it is about values. The EU has values. They're embodied in the acquis. The values of the EU are themselves greatly respected by people in neighbourhood countries. But the values of the EU are not necessarily shared in the world we live in by other major countries, major powers, nor are they necessarily shared in the individualized global media culture, which is the reality of many people's cultural experience. People in the Arab world get their information from many diverse sources. They do not listen just to one voice of authority. They increasingly want to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and from, say, China, India, America, the EU. The EU has to recognize that its privileged position in relation to these countries may not be something it can sustain in the past, so therefore it has to make an effort to realize something tangible for these people in the domain of culture in these countries, which reflects their aspirations, which reflects the context which they are in, the debates they need to have before the EU seeks to impose its own questions, even, on the area and seek a response to them. Culture gives visibility to debate, it gives visibility to questions of identity, it helps to discuss where the contextual limits are of the things people can imagine on a day-to-day basis as making their real lives. It has to be about reality at the end of the day. An Italian artist once said to me, in culture there is realtà and there is fantasia. We need both. We need both to put a smile on the faces of people who need fantasia, and we need to recognize that it's grounded always in realtà. Thank you.